Some places do not just exist, they accumulate. History, violence, isolation, radiation, heat that liquefies lead. These are not tourist destinations. These are places where the Earth itself has drawn a line, where human systems have collapsed, where nature or human cruelty has created conditions so extreme that survival becomes the exception. Drop a comment right now telling us where you are watching from, and whether you would visit any of these places if given the chance. We want to see how many people are brave enough to even consider it. At number 6, we will take you to an island where entering without clearance is illegal and where the death toll is documented in the hundreds. At number 3, you will see what happens when an entire region becomes a furnace. And the place at number 1 has a death count so high, so thoroughly recorded that researchers still argue about the exact number. Not because the evidence is missing, because there is too much of it. North Sentinel Island sits in the Bay of Bengal, part of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, approximately 50 kilometers west of the southern tip of South Andaman. The island covers roughly 60 square kilometers. It is covered in dense forest. It is surrounded by coral reefs that make approach difficult even in calm water. The Indian government maintains a 3-mile exclusion zone around the island. Entering that zone without authorization is illegal under Indian law. The Sentinelese people have lived on the island for an estimated 60,000 years. They are one of the last uncontacted tribes on Earth. They have rejected every attempt at contact. In 1991, a team from the Indian government made peaceful contact during a series of controlled visits. The Sentinelese accepted coconuts left on the beach. Contact ceased shortly afterward. The Indian government determined that further interaction posed too great a risk, both to the Sentinelese and to outsiders. In 2006, 2 fishermen drifted too close to the island. Their boat was found later. Their bodies were not recovered. In 2018, an American missionary named John Allen Chow paid fishermen to take him to the island. He made 3 separate attempts to land. On the 3rd attempt, he was killed. Fishermen watching from a distance saw Sentinelese tribespeople dragging his body across the beach. The body was never retrieved. Indian authorities did not attempt recovery. The risk was considered too high. The pattern is consistent. Approach results in hostility. Attempts to make contact result in arrows, stones, and occasionally death. The Sentinelese do not want visitors. They have made that clear for centuries. Anthropologists who have studied the tribe from a distance believe their isolation has protected them from diseases that would devastate their population. Contact, even peaceful contact, could kill them. That is why the exclusion zone remains in place. At least North Sentinel Island gives you a warning. The next place kills without ever showing a single human face. The Danakil Depression sits in northeastern Ethiopia, near the border with Eritrea. It is one of the lowest points on Earth, dropping 125 meters below sea level. It is also one of the hottest. Average temperatures exceed 34 degrees Celsius year-round. During the day, ground temperatures can reach 70 degrees Celsius. The air shimmers, the ground cracks, water evaporates faster than it can be consumed. The landscape looks alien. Sulfur springs bubble across the surface, creating pools of acidic water in shades of yellow, green, and orange. Salt flats stretch for kilometers, broken by jagged formations of mineral deposits. Active volcanoes dot the region. Erta Ale, one of the few permanent lava lakes on Earth, sits in the northern part of the depression. The lava glows at night. The heat is constant. The Afar people live in the region. They have adapted to conditions that would kill most visitors within days. They mine salt from the flats, cutting blocks by hand and loading them onto camel caravans. The work is brutal. Dehydration is a constant threat. There is no shade, there is no relief. Tourists visit the Danakil Depression, but only with guides, only in organized groups, and only during the cooler months. Even then, the heat is severe. Visitors are required to carry large quantities of water. Heat stroke is common. In 2012, 5 tourists were killed in an attack by gunmen near the Eritrean border. The region is remote, politically unstable, and difficult to secure. Rescue, if needed, can take hours or days. The danger is not supernatural, it is geological. The Earth here is actively hostile. The heat, the acid, the isolation, this is what happens when a landscape rejects habitability. But at least the Danakil Depression is visible. The next place hides its danger beneath the surface. Lake Natron sits in northern Tanzania, near the border with Kenya. It is approximately 57 kilometers long and 22 kilometers wide. The water is shallow, rarely exceeding 3 meters in depth. The lake is fed by mineral-rich hot springs in the southern Uaso and Njiro River. It has no outflow. Water that enters the lake stays there until it evaporates. The result is a chemical concentration so extreme that the lake has become toxic to most forms of life. The water in Lake Natron is highly alkaline, with pH levels that can reach 10.5. That is caustic enough to burn skin and eyes on contact. The temperature of the water can exceed 60 degrees Celsius in some areas. The combination of heat and alkalinity creates conditions that preserve organic matter in disturbing ways. Animals that die in the lake or along its shores often calcify, their bodies encrusted in salt and mineral deposits. They become statues. Photographer Nick Brandt documented this phenomenon in his 2013 book Across the Ravaged Land. He found the calcified remains of birds, bats, and other small animals along the shoreline. The poses were lifelike, wings spread, heads turned. The chemical composition of the water had mummified them where they fell. The images are unsettling because the animals look alive. They are not. Lesser flamingos are the only species that thrive in Lake Natron. The lake is one of their primary breeding grounds in East Africa. They feed on the algae that flourishes in the alkaline water. The algae gives the lake its red and pink hues. For the flamingos, the lake is a sanctuary. For almost everything else, it is a death trap. Visitors can approach the lake, but they are warned not to enter the water. Contact with the water causes chemical burns. The heat is extreme. The smell of sulfur hangs in the air. Tour guides operating in the region emphasize caution. The lake is beautiful from a distance. Up close, it becomes clear that beauty and lethality are not opposites. At least Lake Natron stays in one place. The next location moves. If you are still here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The rest of this list does not get safer. We still have a forest that glows in the dark, a valley where hundreds have died searching for gold, and a place where entering means you will likely never leave alive. The zone of radioactive exclusion around Chernobyl covers approximately 2,600 square kilometers across northern Ukraine and southern Belarus. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant, located near the now-abandoned city of Pripyat, experienced a catastrophic reactor failure on April 26, 1986. Reactor number 4 exploded during a safety test. The explosion released radioactive material across Europe. The immediate death toll was 31. The long-term death toll remains disputed. Estimates range from 4,000 to over 90,000, depending on which cancers and illnesses are attributed to radiation exposure. The Soviet government evacuated Pripyat 36 hours after the explosion. Residents were told to take only what they could carry and that they would return in a few days. They never did. The city remains abandoned. Schools, hospitals, apartment buildings, and an amusement park that never officially opened are still there. Nature has reclaimed much of the area. Trees grow through buildings. Vines cover walls, but the radiation remains. The most dangerous area is the reactor itself, now encased in a massive steel containment structure called the New Safe Confinement. It was completed in 2016 and is designed to last 100 years. Inside, radiation levels are still lethal. The Elephant's Foot, a massive corium formed when the reactor core melted, sits in the basement of the reactor building. In 1986, standing near it for 5 minutes would deliver a fatal dose of radiation. Even now, decades later, prolonged exposure is deadly. Tourists visit the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Licensed tour operators offer day trips. Visitors are required to wear dosimeters and follow strict protocols. Do not touch anything. Do not sit on the ground. Do not eat food that has been exposed to the air. The tour are carefully managed to minimize exposure. Background radiation in most parts of the zone is elevated but not immediately dangerous. Certain hotspots, however, remain lethal. Researchers continue to study the zone. Wildlife has returned in unexpected numbers. Wolves, deer, wild boar, and even lynx have been documented. The absence of humans has allowed ecosystems to recover even in the presence of radiation. But the animals are not safe. Studies show elevated mutation rates, shorter lifespans, and abnormalities in reproduction. The zone is a living experiment in what happens when a landscape becomes contaminated and humans leave. The danger is invisible. You cannot see radiation, you cannot smell it, you can only measure it, and in certain areas the measurements are still catastrophic. The Chernobyl exclusion zone is dangerous because of what humans did. The next place is dangerous because of what humans want. Death Valley National Park sits along the border of California and Nevada in the United States. It is the hottest, driest, and lowest national park in the country. Badwater Basin, the lowest point in North America, sits 86 meters below sea level. In summer, temperatures regularly exceed 49 degrees Celsius. The record high recorded on July 10, 1913 was 56.7 degrees Celsius. That record stood for over a century and remains one of the highest reliably recorded temperatures on Earth. The valley is vast. It covers over 13,600 square kilometers. Much of it is desert, water is scarce, vegetation is sparse. The landscape is composed of salt flats, sand dunes, rocky mountains, and expansive stretches of barren ground. There are no services in large portions of the park. Cell phone coverage is unreliable. If your vehicle breaks down in the backcountry, rescue can take hours or longer. People die in Death Valley every year. The National Park Service tracks the deaths. Heat is a leading cause. Dehydration, heat stroke, and cardiovascular collapse claim lives regularly. In July 2023, a motorcyclist died from heat exposure after his bike broke down. In August 2021, a hiker was found dead on a remote trail. His water supply had run out. These are not isolated incidents, they are recurring patterns. Tourists underestimate the danger. They arrive in summer, often from cooler climates, and attempt hikes in the middle of the day. Park rangers post warning signs: drink water, carry extra, stay near your vehicle, do not hike after 10 a.m. in summer. The warnings are clear, they are frequently ignored. The valley also attracts those searching for lost treasures. The Lost Gunsight Mine is one of the most famous legends in Death Valley. Prospectors have searched for it for over a century, some never returned. In 1996, 4 German tourists disappeared in the park. Their remains were found years later in remote areas. They had been searching for something. They did not survive. The park is beautiful, the sunsets are extraordinary, the night skis are clear and filled with stars, but beauty does not reduce lethality. Death Valley earns its name. At least Death Valley gives you a fighting chance if you prepare. The next place does not care how prepared you are. Snake Island, officially known as Ilha de Queimada Grande, sits approximately 33 kilometers off the coast of São Paulo, Brazil. It is small, covering roughly 43 hectares. It is heavily forested. It is also home to one of the highest concentrations of venomous snakes anywhere on Earth. The golden lancehead pit viper, Bothrops insularis, is found nowhere else. Estimates suggest there are between 1 and 5 snakes per square meter in certain areas of the island. The golden lancehead is highly venomous. Its venom is hemotoxic, causing tissue damage, internal bleeding, and if untreated, death. There is no hospital on the island. There is no permanent human presence. The Brazilian Navy has prohibited public access. The only people permitted on the island are researchers with special authorization, and even they operate under strict safety protocols. The snake population evolved in isolation. Roughly 11,000 years ago, rising sea levels cut the island off from the mainland. The snakes trapped there adapted. With no ground-dwelling prey, they developed stronger venom to hunt birds. The venom acts faster than that of their mainland relatives. A bite can kill within hours. Antivenom exists, but it must be administered quickly. On the island, that is not possible. There are stories of the island's last lighthouse keeper and his family who maintained the lighthouse in the early 20th century. According to local accounts, snakes entered the lighthouse one night. The family fled. They were found dead in the forest, covered in bites. The story has not been independently verified, but the lighthouse has been automated since the early 1920s. No one lives there now. Researchers who visit the island describe a constant awareness. Every step must be calculated. Snakes are active during the day and night. They are found in trees, on the ground, and among the rocks. There is no safe zone. The density of the population means encounters are unavoidable. Fieldwork is conducted in full protective gear with antivenom on hand and with evacuation plans in place. Snake Island is not cursed in any supernatural sense. It is simply a place where evolution produced a predator in such concentration that human presence became unsustainable. The Brazilian government has kept the island closed for decades. There are no plans to change that. The danger on Snake Island is biological. The danger at number 1 is entirely human in origin, and it is still there. Chuol Sleng Genocide Museum is located in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. The building was originally a high school called Ko Phonhia Yat. In 1975, the Khmer Rouge seized power in Cambodia. They converted the school into Security Prison 21, known as S21. It became a detention, interrogation, and execution center. Between 1975 and 1979, at least 12,000 people were imprisoned there. Fewer than 20 survived. The Khmer Rouge documented everything. Prisoners were photographed upon arrival. Their faces were recorded in black and white. Men, women, children, some of the children were infants. The photographs still cover the walls of the museum, thousands of them. They stared directly into the camera. Most of them were dead within weeks. Prisoners were held in small cells, some in classrooms divided by brick partitions, others in even smaller spaces created from wood and wire. They were chained to the floor. Interrogations were brutal. Torture was systematic. Confessions were extracted, often fabricated, implicating others who were then arrested and brought to S21. The cycle continued. Most prisoners were not executed at Chuol Sleng. They were transported to Choeung Ek, a killing field approximately 15 kilometers south of Phnom Penh. There they were murdered and buried in mass graves. The remains of nearly 9,000 people have been exhumed from Choeung Ek. Many more sites exist across Cambodia. The total death toll of the Khmer Rouge regime is estimated at 1.7 to 2 million people, roughly a quarter of Cambodia's population at the time. Chuol Sleng was liberated on January 7, 1979 when Vietnamese forces entered Phnom Penh. They found the prison abandoned. Bodies were still chained to beds in the interrogation rooms. Blood stained the floors. The Khmer Rouge had fled. Documentation was left behind. thousands of pages of confessions, photographs, and administrative records. The evidence was overwhelming. The site was converted into a museum in 1980. It remains largely unchanged. The cells are still there. The instruments of torture are displayed. The photographs remain on the walls. Visitors walk through the same rooms where prisoners were held. They see the same beds, the same shackles. There is no narration. There is no dramatic presentation. The site speaks for itself. Survivors of S-21 have given testimony. Chum Mei and Bu Meng are two of the last known survivors still alive. They have described the conditions, the fear, the certainty of death. Bu Meng survived because he could paint. The Khmer Rouge needed portraits of their leaders. Chum Mei survived because he could repair typewriters. Everyone else died. Visitors to Chuol Sleng often describe the same sensation. Silence. Even when the museum is crowded, it feels quiet. The air is heavy. Many people leave faster than they intended. They do not always explain why. The weight of the place is not supernatural, it is factual. It is the weight of 12,000 lives documented, recorded, and extinguished in a building that was designed for children to learn in. There is no ghost story at Chuol Sleng. There is only what happened, and that is worse. 6 places, 5 continents, and a single thread connecting all of them. These are not places where danger is rumored or imagined. These are places where the danger is documented, measurable, and in some cases still active. Some of them are remote, some of them are open to the public, all of them have a body count. Which place disturbed you the most? Tell us in the comments. And if you think you know a location that belongs on this list, tell us that too. The next video takes you inside places that should not exist but do. You will not want to miss it. What makes these places so compelling is that they refuse to be forgotten. They exist in a state between natural landmark and memorial, between location and warning. When you stand in front of them, whether physically or through documentation, you are confronted with something that cannot be sanitized or simplified. These are not places that have been edited for public consumption. They are raw. North Sentinel Island reminds us that there are still frontiers in the modern world, places where sovereignty means something different. The Indian government's decision to maintain the exclusion zone is not out of cruelty. It is out of recognition that some encounters cannot be undone. The Sentinelese have made their choice. For centuries, they have chosen isolation over integration. Respect for that choice means accepting that some questions will never be answered. We will never know what their society looks like from the inside. We will never understand their language, their beliefs, or their social structures. And perhaps that is the point. Not everything needs to be known. Not everything should be explored. The Danakil Depression stands as a monument to extremity. It is what geology looks like when it stops pretending to be hospitable. The Afar people who live there have adapted in ways that seem impossible to outsiders. They have built lives in conditions that would seem uninhabitable by almost any standard. That is not luck. That is ingenuity, resilience, and generations of accumulated knowledge. When we look at the Danakil Depression, we are not just seeing a hostile landscape. We are seeing proof of human adaptability. Lake Natron's chemical transformation of animals into statues is troubling because it happens without intention. There is no malice in the lake, it simply is what it is. The calcified remains are not victims of cruelty, they are victims of chemistry. There is something almost peaceful about that distinction, even as the imagery remains disturbing. The lake does not hunt, it does not pursue, it simply exists, and existence itself is enough to transform life into something else. Chernobyl represents a different kind of permanence. The explosion happened in seconds, the evacuation took hours, but the consequences stretched across decades and will continue for centuries. The new safe confinement was built to last 100 years, but radioactive material will remain dangerous far longer than that. Plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years. That means the zone will not be safe again in any meaningful human timeframe. Our children's children will still need to avoid certain areas. That is the cost of a single accident. That is what 7 seconds of equipment failure transformed into. Death Valley is perhaps the most democratic of these places. It does not discriminate. It will kill you if you underestimate it. That is its only rule. People die there every single year, often people who believed they could handle it. The landscape does not care about your confidence. It does not care about your preparation. It only cares about the physics of heat, hydration, and human limitation. Those who survive Death Valley do so by respecting those limits. Snake Island is nature at its most hostile. The snakes did not choose to be there, they evolved there. They are not evil, they are simply predators in a space where humans do not belong. The Brazilian Navy's decision to prohibit access is not about controlling nature. It is about acknowledging that some ecosystems function better without human interference. The snakes are thriving, leave them alone. But Chuol Sleng is different. Chuol Sleng is about choice. The Khmer Rouge chose to build a prison, they chose to torture, they chose to document their crimes in meticulous detail, and that choice created a place so heavy with consequence that it still affects everyone who enters it. The photographs are not accidents. The confessions are not byproducts. They are evidence of intention. That is what makes Chuol Slang the most disturbing place on this list. It is not dangerous because of what it is. It is dangerous because of what it represents about what humans are capable of. Each of these places teaches a different lesson. North Sentinel Island teaches us about respect and boundaries. The Danakil Depression teaches us about adaptation and survival. Lake Natron teaches us about the neutral cruelty of chemistry. Chernobyl teaches us about consequences and permanence. Death Valley teaches us about humility. Snake Island teaches us about staying out of places where we do not belong. And Chuol Slang teaches us about the importance of remembering, even when remembering hurts. The thing about dangerous places is that they are dangerous precisely because they refuse to accommodate us. They do not change, they do not care about our comfort, they do not negotiate. What they offer instead is truth. And truth, especially truth about the limits of our own resilience and the depths of human cruelty, is always uncomfortable. If you are watching this, you made it through all 6. You heard about islands and deserts and prisons. You learned about snakes and radiation and alkaline lakes. You thought about what it would mean to visit these places. And maybe you decided you would, maybe you decided you would not. Both are reasonable responses. What matters is that you know they exist. What matters is that you remember. So thank you for watching. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. Thank you for caring enough about these stories to listen to them. If this video meant something to you, if these places fascinated you or disturbed you or made you think differently about danger and geography and human consequence, please hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Join our community of people who are interested in the places that most of us will never see and the stories we tell about them. There are more locations coming, more dangerous places, more stories that need to be told. You will not want to miss them.